Where's the music? Where's the music? Anyway, my friend, good evening. How are you? Let me see if I can. There we go. I think it's time. I think it's time to get a new audio file. Yeah, we'll do that. I'll take care of that. Anyway, good evening, my friends. How are you? Welcome to another edition of Wednesday Night Live with me, Mike Avery. There you go, Rabbit Homesteading. You've been very patient. I don't know how you could see me. I got to be honest. I didn't realize that that was even an option, but you were watching me before I was ready to go. Let's see who else is along with us this evening. We've got Sean Hodges, fellow owner Quest, or Angler Quest owner. In fact, an owner of a family fish, which if I have a boat next year, it'll likely be a family fish. Cliff, good evening. How are you? Hey, Craig, another Angler Quest owner, brand new Angler Quest owner. And I think the name of the boat being called Great Gig, perfect. Perfect. Michelle, if you're listening, I think you'd have the coolest boat name on the water. John, we'll see you in just a couple of weeks. John Kramer is here as well. Randy, good evening. How are you? Paul, nice to have you along with us. Speaking of Angler Quest, Gene builds Angler Quest. Hey, Cap, right back at you. How you doing, buddy? Ed, nice to have you along with us. Another Ed. Patrick, how are you tonight? I look well polished. Well, I shaved my head last night. Maybe I just need to rough it up a little bit. That's still well polished. Hey, Jake, how are you? Jeff, nice to have you with us. Don, I don't recognize your name. If you've been with us, I apologize. But anyway, glad to have you here with us. Jerry checking in from the Adirondacks in New York, from his deer stand in New York. John, good evening. How are you? Randy, the picture of the one that Justin shot, Tomei, the big one with a blaze in the UP, it was beautiful. Hey, Tony, good evening, buddy. How are you? I saw your Facebook message. Apologize for not getting back with you. We go down to Ohio. We're leaving Sunday the 15th. We start hunting Monday the 16th. And by the way, we have a last-minute opening on that trip. If anybody's interested in going, love to have you join us. Hello, Jim. You know what? I had a wonderful day last Saturday at the Michigan Stadium with my daughter Shelby. The weather couldn't have been better. The game was great. It was good to spend great to spend some time with her. Just her and I. We hadn't had a chance to do that lately. In fact, she bought me the tickets, and it was wonderful. Ruben, good afternoon, buddy. How are things in Colorado? Gene says, if you get a new one next year, I'll build that helm again for you. So you're building the helms on the family fish too, Gene? Jerry checking in from Algonac. Joe, how goes the lawn care business? Are you slowing down now, or are you extremely busy with closing out of sprinkler systems and maybe a little early fall cleanup? I hope you're busy. Philip. Jim says getting hearing aids is one thing, wearing them is another. My dad has them, but he doesn't wear them. Yes. I understand that, and Jim is saying this because I talked about the fact this morning that I'm actually giving up and I'm getting hearing aids. My hearing is damaged from loud music when I was a kid and from unprotected shooting, not wearing hearing protection when I was shooting. And it got to the point 3 weeks ago, actually 3.5 weeks ago now, at my daughter Shelby's reception, when I was in a crowded room with people around me and I had no idea what people were saying. So I'm giving up and I'm pulling the trigger. And that's what Mike Stewart, audiologist, told me. He said, if you're going to get the darn things, wear them because they don't do you any good sitting there in the Charger. Dave, good evening from the Eastern UP. Congrats on your bear. Gene says he builds all of the helms. Bob is watching folks catching browns in Rochester, New York today. That sounds like fun. You should be catching them yourself. It says no handbooks with deer licenses. I was told you have to use a DNR app. What's up with that? Is who a veteran or an avid hunter? Yeah, Ed, we had somebody from the DNR on a few weeks ago addressing that very same question. And what they found out is it used to be in the old days when you bought a fishing license in person at the store, that retailer was supposed to give you a hunting digest. Well, the DNR found out that they were printing a whole bunch of those things that were just going to waste because nobody was using them. I actually give them credit with this. You look at it, if you're gonna use our money, please use it. Please be good stewards of it. And the fact that they were wasting money, they went to an online digest. And yes, it is on your phone now. If you're talking about me, John, I am not a veteran. I wish I was, but I'm not. Dan, good evening. How are you? Interesting question from Jerry. Anybody have any luck keeping big golden shiners alive? Ace, how you doing? Say hi to Dave for me. Nice fish, and to hear elks bugling. How cool is that? Gene says we've cut back on staff. I'm the only person building helms right now. Cut back on staff. That's interesting. Hey, Johnny, how you doing, buddy? Tim says, Mike, just want to thank my lovely wife, Stacy, for buying me a new 10-point Titan decocking bow, the new style. How cool is that? Good for you. You're going to love a bow that you can decock. Lisa, sad news. The funding to save Cornwall flooding in the Pigeon River State Forest has failed again on party lines in Lansing. I'm sorry to hear that. Lisa, I'm really sorry to hear that because you've been a very strong advocate. I'm sorry to hear that. Joe says, still cutting grass right now. Been super busy with all the rain, gearing up for fall cleanup. All is good with me. Billy, good evening. How are you? Denise just got a new 10-point last week. I was shooting mine yesterday. Paul says he freezes water bottles and drops them in the bucket, keeps them alive a little bit longer. Scott, he lost his wallet in Montana. Cost him $20 for the combo, $20 for the restricted license, $3 bait, $3, $46 replacement just to print new licenses. Frustrating. Hey, Brian, good evening. How are you? Johnny said, waiting on a hunter might be the last guy bears are either looking for deer bait or sick of the Rice Krispie treats. I don't know how you could be sick of Rice Krispie treats, Johnny. I could eat those things every day. I love those. So your bear season's wrapping up, buddy? Congrats to Denise from Holly. Anyway, if I haven't said so, my name is Mike Avery. This is Wednesday Night Live. It's something I do every Wednesday night on my Facebook page, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Twitter, now called X. You can go live on Instagram, but the streaming platform that I use does not allow me to go live to Instagram with everything else. We're still working on a way to do it. I thought when I got verified on Instagram it would make it easier, but it hasn't. John says, put more sportsmen in positions and maybe it would work better on these things. Sportsmen work hard. Good evening, Garth. How are you this evening? Johnny says that's why if we were bears, we'd all be dead because we like Rice Krispie treats. John says, yes, like shrimp. Keep them cold and aerated. Good evening, Brian. How are you? Nice to have you along with us. Well, Jim, here's the deal. Angler Quest is no longer making the Pro Troll that I currently have. I would keep that Pro Troll forever if I could. Let me rephrase. I will keep that Pro Troll forever if I can. But if they're not going to make the Pro Troll anymore, the future of marketing the Pro Troll is up in the air. And that's where I am. Now, they are still making a family fish. And I could run a family fish next year and be very, very happy and do a lot of good promotion. So we'll see. We'll see where we go. Art Lewis, ladies and gentlemen, Art Lewis. You're my hero, Art. Good evening, Charles. How are you? Brian, who has lease property near ours, said his trail cams are slow, but his cousins have action. We have does, fawns, and a few small bucks. Nothing of any consequence yet. Eric, good evening. How are you? Supposed to be 80 on opening day. That's too bad. I will be out there the evening of opening day. My grandson Trent is hunting Sunday night, so I'm going to go out Sunday night as well. I don't expect anything, and actually, here's what I want to do from our lease property. I want to shoot a big doe. Shoot a big doe. If I can shoot a decent buck in Ohio, I'll be happy. If not, I'll still be happy. If I shoot a big doe on our lease property, I'll be happy. Johnny says, as of tonight, so far, your bear might be safe till next year. Way to go, Johnny. You're taking care of me, buddy. I appreciate it. Kevin, Coyote Killing King, Ron, how are you? Dakota, nice to have you along with us. You are welcome, Ed. Okay, so some things I want to talk about. We are coming up now on the month of Rocktober. Best month of the year, in my opinion. That was a very cool video. It says more bucks on the northeast side of the state. Bow season starts Sunday. I re-sighted in my 10-point crossbow 2 days ago. It was Monday now. I had new strings and a new string and cables put on there. And the guys at Jay's suggested it, and it only makes sense whenever you mess with a bow at all, make sure you're dead on. Re-sight it, reshoot it. And I was off a little bit, but I got it tweaked. I'm back. I'm ready to go. Ed says, we're seeing lots of bucks on camera, just not Ohio Bow Hunting Outfitters big. Johnny, don't forget to save one for me next year. Captain Jim says, I don't get excited about hunting until October 20th. That's when the bucks start to lose their minds. I agree, Jim. I can't disagree with that. But if my grandson says, hey, Grandpa, are you hunting opening day? I'm going to go hunt with him opening day. But I'm with you. I don't get too excited about it either. Hello, Jeff. How are you? In fact, I don't get too excited about deer hunting in general. I got to be honest with you. Now, if we're talking bear hunting or walleye fishing, then you got my attention. Speaking of walleye fishing, the Angler Quest is still at the dock. I'm debating what to do with it. Do I pull it? Do I leave it in the water? Every year I tell myself I'm going to hunt. I'm going to fish in the fall. Every year I don't fish in the fall. I haven't been out there now since August. Art, the last time I was on my boat was that fishing trip with you and Dixie Dave, and I think that was August 8th, if I remember right. Brad, good evening. John says, too hot to hunt on Sunday. He'll go fishing. Let me see what the weather forecast is. Weather forecast is for I can't find it now. I usually look on my phone, and I'm using my phone as my camera. So Art says, okay, let's go again before the first frost. Scott says fish. Ed says pull it. I'm going to pull it. I could have pulled my boat August 10th. I do my fishing early in the season. If I could have my boat in the water in April and fish really, really hard until the first week in August, I'd be happy. But yeah, just pull it. Evening, David. How are you? Jeff's got another bear on trail cam just down the road from the cabin. Danny, good evening. Lure Lipstick says, evening, Mike. Fish, fish. Well, Lure Lipstick and John Sullivan, the guy behind Lure Lipstick, would have a vested interest in that. In fact, he told me. I'm not going to tell you what he told me, but John Sullivan gave me a really good tip the other day, and it would be really close for me, and it did get my attention, John. LureLipstick.com, LureLipstick.com. Also, John, did you get my follow-up text to our conversation the other day with maybe tweaking something a little bit? A lady that both John and I know, Lori Card. Good evening, Lori. Jeff, how are you tonight? Glad to have you along with us. A couple of things. All right, good deal. A couple of things I wanted to talk about. Well, I'll save it till I get to the rundown of the show. When I talked online about shooting my crossbow and getting it dialed in. I had some naysayers crawl out from under their rocks and talk about, you might just as well wait until rifle season, and they're a poacher's tool. And it's too easy, and you're lazy, and why would you? I'll be in Kentucky during the opener, touring your favorite drink manufacturer you may have tonight. May or may not have a maker's mark as soon as I get done. Tell them I said hi. Tell them tell them their biggest customer says hi. Yes, shooting a crossbow is easier than hunting with a recurve. Does that make it bad? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. If shooting a crossbow can make the average hunter more accurate and more confident, why not? People say, well, we're going the wrong direction. And my favorite thing is when I have somebody tell me, Fred Bear never would have liked crossbows. He would have been against crossbows. Now, I wonder where they get that from. Did Fred Bear tell them that personally? Did they talk to Fred and he told them that? I don't think so. In fact, I know this for a fact. Fred Bear was an avid promoter of archery. Any way he could get people in the field, any way he could promote the sport, and to be honest with you, any way he could sell product. The first time I ever saw a crossbow, Fred Bear was standing next to me, or rather, should I say, I was standing next to Fred Bear. The first time I ever saw a crossbow was like 1985-ish at the Grouse Haven Hunting Lodge up by Rose City in Michigan. It was the Bear Archery Grouse Haven Hunting Lodge at the time. And they had these new contraptions in front of them called a crossbow out on the range. And Fred Bear was standing there looking at these crossbows and checking them out. If Fred would have wanted to kibosh the whole Bear Archery crossbow movement right then, he could. So don't tell me Fred Bear would be against crossbows unless you had that conversation with him. I did. Jim says less movement using a crossbow. Yeah, they're easier to be proficient. They're easier to be accurate. Does a crossbow allow you to make a longer shot? In my opinion, if you are going to be ethical, I can't shoot any farther with my crossbow than I could with my compound when I was shooting my compound a lot. Crossbows, the bolt drops off so fast. Although I call it an arrow. It's not really a bolt. A bolt's about this long and has no veins. The things we shoot out of our crossbows, I call an arrow. John, hey, Mike, I missed the conversation you were having with the DNR. What transpired to the address of using shooting dog? Okay. Well, I can't tell you about Kentucky. I can tell you, John, that here in Michigan, the only, let me back up. Anybody can legally shoot a dog in Michigan if that dog is threatening domestic, like cattle or sheep or goats or chickens. You can shoot a dog. If the dog is also threatening you or somebody else, threatening, attacking, right? There's the gray area. You can legally shoot a dog. Other than that, dogs are protected. Even if you see one running a deer, you can't shoot it. Cats, on the other hand, there's no law against shooting a cat. However, the big caveat here is there are cruelty to animal charges, where if somebody saw you shoot a cat, even though there's no law legally against it, it would be up to the local county prosecutor. And we know that the prosecutors are, they're elected officials. So they like to get exposure. They like to get publicity sometimes. And if a local prosecutor could get a bunch of exposure, publicity, PR, by charging you with shooting a cat, they just might do it. So that's the long answer to a short question. John says, a heck of a lot better to get a clean shot with a crossbow instead of a bad shot not hunting at all, or a bad shot with a compound, or a bad shot with a recurve. Scott says they'll shoot a deer with a gun, but a crossbow is cheating. Dream on. Ed says with his shoulders, he's done archery hunting without the crossbow. Jeff says he's thinking about selling his, bought his from a friend a couple of years ago, still haven't hunted with it. Hey, man, if you haven't hunted with it, sell it. John said they made Fred Bear bows back in 1981. Good evening, Eric. How are you? So I'm a big fan of crossbows. The most rewarding and satisfying archery hunts I've ever had were with my recurve. I killed a nice turkey with my recurve. I killed a bear with my recurve, but I've never killed a deer with my recurve. And I won't at this point because I've given it up. Why? Because I'm not willing to put the time into shooting my recurve or a longbow anymore to be confident, consistent, and proficient. And I think we as hunters, as ethical hunters, as we all are, we have to do that. The best hunts I've ever had were hunting with a recurve. It's a beautiful, pure, simple, basic, instinctive, intimate hunting tool. It's beautiful. I mean, when you shoot a good arrow with a recurve and it goes so slow you can watch the feathers turn, I mean, it's beautiful. But I had lost confidence in it because I wasn't shooting it enough. When I go into the woods, I want to know that when I decide to throw an arrow at something, I have the best possible chance of making a good, quick, clean, humane killing shot. And a crossbow allows me to do that. Johnny Bowler says people can say whatever they want. As long as it's legal, use whatever you want. Leave everybody else alone. Amen to that, brother. Rob brings up an interesting point. Remember how folks trashed compounds when they first came out? Seems no one can see the upside with new stuff until they get their own hands on it. Isn't that interesting? Hey, Brent, how you doing, buddy? How's the lure business? Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it, Tony. Yeah, I mean, hunt your hunt. I can still pull a low poundage recurve, but I'm not going to hunt with it. It doesn't feel good. Now, when on the other hand, when I take that 10 point and I put it on a set of shooting sticks and I lay that crosshair on whatever target or critter I want to shoot, I feel pretty good about when I pull that trigger, that arrow is going to go where I want it to go. And that's what it's all about. Tim says they donated all their compounds to the 4-H of Michigan. Chad. Okay, let me back up a step here. Shooting it, well, Byron Ferguson is well known for that, shooting a quarter in the air with a recurve. Stepson bought an $800 hat that happened to come with a bear compound. Chad says it's a great feeling when your wife's crossbow limbs break a week before season and your 7-year-old's bowstring broke before bow season. No, it's not a good feeling. Good question, Jason. I wasn't aware of this. Whatever happened with MUCC pushing to make feral cats an invasive species? I vaguely remember that. I had forgotten about it. I'm not sure I believe that, Eric. Fred Bear said a compound would never be popular. I can't argue it because I didn't hear him say it either way. But it kind of goes against the grain of the conversations I had with him. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Jim says, I think a crossbow, it's awesome to have an option of a crossbow, especially for people with shoulder injuries. Yeah. But I support crossbows for anybody who wants to use them. I know it. That's terrible, Chad. Just crystal light at this point. No maker's mark. Art says, amen to enjoying the great Michigan outdoors by using and doing whatever the law allows. Crossbow still archery. Art is a great point. And I think all hunters and anglers and sportsmen and women should keep this in mind. When we start infighting and criticizing our fellow legal hunters and anglers, all we do is make ourselves look foolish and we make ourselves look weak. and it creates a divide that the antis can capitalize on, exploit, take advantage of. It shouldn't matter to us what a fellow hunter or angler uses as long as it's legal. Now, if somebody's doing something illegal, that's a different matter. In some ways, in my opinion, if you see somebody out there like poaching a deer, I think you have a moral obligation to turn them in. Call the Report All Poaching line, the RAP line, 800-292-7800. Take down whatever. Don't confront the person yourself because they're likely armed, and that'll escalate to something you don't want to do. I don't think. Take down the information, call them in. But if they're doing something legally and you disagree with them, keep it to yourself. You can't mandate your morals and ethics to a fellow hunter or angler. Evening, Michael. How are you? Hey, Ron St. Louis of Northern Wilderness Bear Outfitters. How are you doing this evening? If anybody is looking for a wonderful Ontario bear hunt with a very high probability of seeing animals and a very high probability of getting a shot opportunity on a bear, you want to get in touch with Ron. Northern Wilderness Bear Outfitters, northernwildernessbearoutfitters.com. Best Ontario bear guide I've ever worked with. And I only said Ontario because I don't want to diss Johnny Bowler, who's a Michigan guy. Evening, Randy. How are you? Mike says, anybody in the market for a crossbow, Jay's is where to go. They got one of the biggest selections I've ever seen. I got mine at Jay's, my 10-point. Good evening, Dennis. Well, that's true. Those who trash compounds will change their views after they're old and gray, can no longer pull their old bow back. But I wish it didn't take that. I wish people who are still young and strong could embrace the crossbow concept as well. Bill Hoffman says, and Bill's got a little law enforcement background, just because it's legal does not mean we have to agree with it. I don't let the state tell me how to think morally. I got to think that one through. You just packed a lot in there, Bill. But and here's what I'm saying, and I think we might be saying the same thing from two different. I'm saying that how I hunt, as long as I hunt legally, is up to me. It's not up to anybody else. I'm saying that if a fellow hunter is hunting in a legal manner, I don't have the right to impose my morals or ethics on him. Are we saying the same thing? Jake says, anybody gearing up for fish? A lot of skeeters out there. When I was checking trail cameras the other day, the mosquitoes ate me alive. Good evening, Bruce. How are you? Thank you, Gene. Appreciate that. Bill says the skeeters are nuts this year. Hey, Scott. Scott Keatsman, I'm going in for 2024 as long as Ron says it's a go. Spring or fall, Scott? Spring or fall? You'll have so much fun up there. Ron is moose hunting right now. Moose hunting. That sounds like a lot of fun. Cow tag and his buddy has a bull tag. Good luck, Ron. Send pictures. Bill says, if the state said you could fish with dynamite, I wouldn't agree with it and wouldn't be quiet about it just because it's legal. All right. Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, moose. Moose is the best wild game I've ever had. Sounds like you like it too, Bill. Scott says, fall bear hunt with Ron will be a second time. Bernie's got a bunch of acorns. Okay, let me tell you who's on the Outdoor Magazine radio show this week because it'll lead into a couple of my other topics. Oh, and don't let me forget the Ask Avery segment, but I'll remember that when I go through the rundown here. My first guest this week is a guy named Steve Hearing. Steve is with a group called Benefit for Kids, the website b4k.org. Listen to this. And I didn't even know these guys existed. They reached out to me. The Benefit for Kids organization is designed to give kids with terminal illnesses hunting and fishing adventures. So if a young kid, God forbid, this is terrible, a young kid has cancer and it's terminal, and they go on a deer hunt before while they still can, the benefit for kids group will make it happen. And actually, the reason he wanted to be on the air, because they're looking for kids. The website b4k.org, b4k.org. Bill knows him. B4K is a great group, he says. Then Scott Safransky of Linwood Beach Marina joins me. He talks about the fall fishing out there on Saginaw Bay in front of the marina. He talks about, and then he also talks about the process of putting your boat away for the winter. Making sure it's winterized correctly, making sure, if you want to get it shrink wrapped, if you want to get it stored, he goes through the whole gamut, linwoodbeachmarina.com. Then Tom Campbell of Woods and Water News has a debrief of their big outdoor weekend and also a preview of their October edition. In the second hour, a friend of mine, an avid hunter and an audiologist, Dr. Mike Stewart. Now, Mike has done much research on hearing loss and shooting. And I've talked with Mike several times on the air, and he's the guy to convince me to go in and get a hearing test. He says, Mike, it sounds to me like your high-frequency hearing is shot. And it is. After getting it tested, it is. It's from rock concerts when I was a kid standing in front of the tower speakers because I was young and dumb. And it's from shooting without wearing hearing protection. One situation in particular, I had a buddy who was a federal agent. He was carrying a .45. I'd never had the opportunity to shoot a .45 before. We were up in northern Michigan on a grouse hunt. He had his .45 and a whole bunch of boxes of shells. And I said, can I shoot it? And he said, have at it. So I shot that .45 over and over. I love a .45. I love the slow push of a .45. I love a .45. And I shot it way too many times without hearing protection. And on the way home, I knew I was in trouble because my hearing was gone. All I could hear was ringing, garbled noises, and it was that way for a long time. And so long story short, my high-frequency hearing is gone. I've been dealing with it, but at my daughter's wedding reception 3 weeks ago, it got to the point where I said, I've got to do something about it because I could no longer tell what people were saying. This is at my daughter's wedding reception. And I wish I wouldn't have let it go that long because I wasn't able to have good conversations with some people that I wanted to. So, long story short, Justin Hess at Miracle Ear in Midland, he called me in. He said, try these on. I ended up not getting them from Justin, but I have to thank Justin because if not for his involvement, I probably wouldn't have ordered the hearing aids. But I have some on order now, and they should be here next week. So, this week's Ask Avery segment, I'll come back to it in a minute. In the third hour, Jerry Widener of the Hunter Safety System. Jerry, a good friend of mine for many, many years. We talk about the topic of tree stand safety and how Hunter Safety System was instrumental in changing people's attitudes. Jerry was so gracious because I said, Jerry, think of the lives that you've saved over the years. And he said, Mike Avery, think of the lives you've changed. Because I was with Hunter Safety System from the beginning. From the beginning. Wonderful conversation. Jerry is a great guy. And, of course, we wrap it all up with Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. This week's Ask Avery segment gets answered. Sam Sedenary sent me an email. He says, Mike, some no trespassing signs have mysteriously appeared in front of my favorite grouse hunting spot. He said, after double-checking Onyx, I determined the adjacent private landowner had either mistakenly placed them or was purposefully attempting to extend the range of their private hunting ground. What's the best way to determine legitimacy, and what do you do? Lieutenant Mark Papineau of the DNR responded, and I wish I had my glasses on now. He said, this is actually a very common question and occurrence. The posting of public lands could either be intentional or accidental. He said, Onyx will get you close. He said, but don't use it as a definitive reference. Now, I have been using the Onyx app as a definitive reference because to me it feels pretty tight. Lieutenant Papineau says, don't trust it. He says the only way to do that is an official to really find out if you're legal, an official survey. If in doubt, call the DNR. And he says the intentional posting of another's property without permission is a misdemeanor. Could be 90 days in jail or $100 or $500 fine. Well, we know that's not going to happen. Let me go back to where I was. Skeeters, we talked about that. Scott's going, okay. Bill Hoffman. Trying to catch up with where I was, my friends. David checking from Niagara Falls. Bill says, if you stand for nothing, what will you fall for? A lot of things I stand for, Bill. A lot of things I stand for. Mike Hampton says, treat your clothes with permethrin. Yes, permethrin's great stuff. Jim says, no different when they allowed straight wall cartridges, shotgun zone. People didn't like it. All right, Johnny, have a good night, buddy. Ross, good evening, buddy. Where have you been? Haven't talked to you for a while. I hope everything is good. Everything goes okay. Jeff says his stubborn ass now wears earmuffs even while mowing the lawn. Ed says his brother and dad and brother got theirs from Costco. That was going to be that's where I was going to go. Actually, I was going to go to Costco. Hearing aids aren't cheap. In fact, it's kind of ridiculous how much they cost. I mean, I realize there's a lot of technology packed in those things, but what they get for hearing aids is ridiculous. Nothing much, Harry. How you doing, brother? Tim says he loves his 45s. Carried a 45 while in the Army. It's a big, slow moving round with a nice slow push, and yeah, I love a 45. Good evening, Jason. How are you? Nice talking to you the other day. Excited to have you involved in what we have involved there at Trinity. Hey, James. Good evening. How are you? Mark, I will look forward to seeing you in just a couple of weeks now. And this snuck up on me. I was thinking we had like 3 weeks or so before we went to Ohio. No, we got 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks from this weekend. So I'm looking forward to coming down. Emil says, after a dispute with a neighbor, found out his Onyx app was 9 yards off. And see, I didn't know that, Emil. I didn't know that. I thought Onyx was the gospel until Lieutenant Mark Papanow told me otherwise. And your real life example is a great example of that. Hey, Dave, good evening. How are you? I know it works for ticks. Does permethrin work for skeeters? Everybody, it works for ticks. It is our time of year. You still working, Harry, or did you retire? Lack of hearing has a direct correlation to memory loss as we age. Well, you said memory ass, but I think you meant memory loss. Yeah, Thermacel's is the way to go for skeeters. I love Thermacel's. In fact, you can't hunt Ontario, bear hunt, without a Thermacell. Bill, I was at your former employer on Saturday. My daughter Shelby, you know Shelby, got us 2 tickets to the Michigan Rutgers game. Really good seats, and I was down there Saturday. What a riot. That was so much fun. It was a beautiful day. It was a great game. It was just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I knew what you meant. Well, good evening, Bill. Nice to have you along with us. How about camouflage? Prices on that are ridiculous. All right, have a good night. That's interesting, Jason. I don't know. Camouflage is interesting because Bill Jordan never really made any products. He just licensed a design to other companies. Which is a genius move. Speaking of that, I'm recording this month's Primal Outdoors podcast tomorrow, and my guest will be David Blanton of Realtree. We lost one of our hunters for this year. He didn't die, so, I mean, it didn't like we lose one, but he's not coming down. So, yes, I was very sorry to hear that. So, as a result now, we have a last-minute opening that I would like to be able to fill for Bill. So if anybody here has an opening to go bow hunting in Ohio in just a couple of weeks with Bill Piles of Ohio Bow Hunting Outfitters, me and some of my friends, It's not a free hunt. It is a paid hunt. If you are interested, please send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. It is a 5-day hunt. We're driving down Sunday the 15th. The hunt will start Monday the 16th, and it extends through Friday the 20th, I believe it is. No guarantee you're going to shoot a buck. It is a free range hunt, but your odds of seeing a nice deer are pretty darn good. So we have a last minute opening. If you want to go with us, send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. Good evening, Mitchell. How are you? Mike Hampton says permethrin does work for mosquitoes. One more year to go. All right, Harry, you can tough it out, man. Rob says permethrin works on skeeters and ticks. It also kill bees. Bees? I don't think we want to kill bees these days, though, do we? Onyx, Jeff says, Onyx is not very accurate. Just got new GPS with multi-channel. Huge difference in accuracy. Thank you, Jeff. Again, I was not aware of this. I had been treating Onyx as the gospel. I didn't know that. Ed says the loggers that cut their property used Onyx. Your big house was a great experience. Hey, Angie, how you doing tonight? Harry Smith says, I got $5,000 in his hearing aids, but he loves the difference in the woods. Well, and in what you are doing for a living, Harry, working around heavy equipment, I can see where you're hearing. Yeah, isn't it ridiculous? $5,000 for hearing aids? It's crazy. Gus is ready to go. Craig says he picked up a few pointers from your podcast with Lance. Craig, I tell you, Lance is a good friend of mine. I probably talked to him, I don't know, hundreds of times. And every time I talk with him, I learn something new. You're right. The guy's something else. James says he refuses to spend a buttload of money on camo clothes and compound bows. Then don't. Nobody's forcing you to. Brad says he's got 1,800 in scent locks alone. Will I be doing any time shifting when I'm in Ohio? Yes, I'm going to record 2 radio shows the week before, but that shouldn't directly affect our listeners, and I do not plan on doing a Wednesday night live the week I'm gone. Interesting you should ask, John, because Dixie Dave's recipe this week is a grouse. He calls it partridge, but it's a grouse. This week on the show, he's got a grouse recipe. Well, Joe, we'd love to have you there. Amos says it cost him a second survey. Okay. So we're learning, I'm learning, that Onyx is not the definitive source that I thought it was. So thank you for that, folks. Thank you and thank you, Lieutenant Mark Papanoff from the Michigan DNR, for making that known, because I didn't know it. It's getting to be about the time where I want to take this and put about this much Maker's Mark in it and relax. Never had one. It's Onyx is an app. Oh, if you're talking about never had Onyx, it's an app that goes on your phone. Harry says thunder chickens are the best. Yeah, grouse hunting is still a big thing up north. Yeah, Michigan is one of the top grouse hunting and woodcock hunting states in the country. Absolutely. Now, normally, when I start to wrap this up, I would start my music going. Somehow, I found out last week that the music file got corrupted, and I'd forgotten about it until I went to play the music at the beginning of this week's show, and it sounded like, you know how the old meant grouse, never had grouse? It's a very light, very mild meat. It says the #1 woodcock harvest state in the country. It's interesting. People go grouse and woodcock hunting. Grouse and woodcock are completely different critters, and the meat is completely different. Woodcock have a very dark, almost livery taste, and grouse have a very light, almost chicken-like taste. Yeah, grouse are one of those things that can scare the living crap out of you, aren't they? Even when you know they're there and you're expecting them, they still surprise you. So anyway, I can't play the music file because it somehow got corrupted, and it sounds like an old 8-track. You know, or an old cassette. It sounds like it's not digital, but it is. It does get dark now fast, doesn't it, Brent? And you got here just in time to watch me say good night. All right, my friends, my name is Mike Avery. Thank you for joining me on this edition of Wednesday Night Live. If you want to talk to me, send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. If you want to look at my website, it's mikeaveryoutdoors.com. If you want to save 15% on Michigan-made rec broadheads, go to the website recbroadheads.com, recbroadheads.com. Use the promo code Avery15, and you can save 15%. And finally, one last plea. We want to fill a last-minute spot on our Ohio hunt with Bill Piles of Ohio Bow Hunting Outfitters. His website, ohiobowhuntingoutfitters.com. Send me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, and I will give you the details. Thank you, Bill. That's a very nice comment. All right, my friends, have a great night, and thanks for joining me on this edition of Wednesday